Summary. Yagi ran to the principal's office where Nedzu was printing out some last-minute handouts for the conference. "Nedzu, are you aware there's a 200-year-old supervillain sitting in the conference room right now?" The rat took a sip from his teacup. "Where the hell did the tea come from?" and turned towards Yagi. "Yes, are you?" Or, all for one might not be around much, but he is very vigilant about attending parent-teacher conferences. If you asked most of Midoriya Izuku's friends about his home life, they would probably tell you he lives alone with his mother, Midoriya Inko, one of the sweetest women alive. Izuku would probably tell you the same thing, leaving out the part about his father, who tends to disappear for long periods of time, and then walk through the front door on Izuku's birthday like he hadn't just disappeared for 6 months. No matter how often Midoriya Hisashi disappears, though, he always attends the parent-teacher conferences. Sure, they might be significantly less interesting than his usual work, keeping the underground under control, tormenting the current holder of One for All, etc., but keep an eye on your children's education is important, right? The staff at Aldera Middle School were not the sort of people Hisashi particularly liked. They would constantly talk sweet to all the other parents, then turn around and tell Hisashi his son was like the vermin of the earth. Well, maybe they didn't use those exact words, but he could read in between the lines. A benefit for living 200 years is an excellent understanding of social cues. The staff at UA, however, didn't sugarcoat things. Nedzu was skilled with words and could subtly withhold information without anyone realizing it if he wanted to, but he never twisted the truth. Many years of sitting in on parent-teacher conferences had told Hisashi that this school would be perfectly suitable for his little boy. And besides, would he really be all for one if he didn't spy on confidential UA meetings? It's not like they were really confidential, just use a disguise square to become one of the scumbag parents who doesn't attend parent-teacher conferences, and voila, you're in. He would never let his son experience school as bad as Aldera Middle School again. After attending the last meeting of the year before, in place of the parents of one Yuga Haya, really, your kid is in the hero course and you couldn't even bother coming into the parent-teacher conference. All for One once again went back to his work, getting so wrapped up in his business that he had to shamefully call and ask Inko to go to the first UA parent-teacher conference of this year in his place. He didn't even know Izuku had gotten into UA, much less the hero course, until he had to read the email, and by then it was far too late to drop what he was doing to make it to the meeting. Obviously, he was well aware that Izuku had wanted to go, but him actually passing the exam and making it to the hero course? Hisashi had never imagined that outcome. The idea of missing such an important meeting was making him somewhat miserable, and although he considered himself skilled in hiding his true thoughts and feelings, it clearly showed in his face, or where his face should be. When the doctor noticed he was zoning out and stated his concern, All for One simply asked, "Am I a bad father?" Garaki hadn't even been aware that he was a father, much less if he was a good one or not, so he simply went with a safe answer and said, "You're raising a great generation of villains, All for One," and then continued on with his page 42 presentation of why Nomu number 5 would be the right one to defeat All Might. Izuku was a little disappointed his father hadn't even come back to congratulate him on getting into UA, to be honest. Not having to explain his newly obtained quirk was definitely a weight off his shoulders, but still. This was more important than any birthday or holiday, and it made him sad his father wasn't here to share it with him. All that disappointment was replaced with genuine worry when his mom told him she'd be attending the parent-teacher conference in place of his father, though. His father had never missed the Aldera parent-teacher conferences. Ever. The fact that he had deliberately called his mom to ask her to attend in his place? That was a big deal. The parent-teacher conference came and went. School started, and eventually Izuku's concerns about his dad faded away, and were replaced by the regular anxieties of school, such as almost being expelled on the first day and encountering villains on the 7th. The villains seemed to avoid him completely, which was a little strange, but he wasn't going to complain about not dying. Plus, when he got home, very late from school that day, his dad was there. He had heard about what happened and had rushed home to make sure his son was okay. Izuku was so glad to have a father like him, even if he did tend to disappear for months at a time. He stayed at home with his family for a couple of weeks, which surprised both Inko and Izuku, but considering the scare they had just had a week into the school year, it made sense that he wanted to stick a little closer to his family. Underground evil leader, profession be damned. Shortly after the sports festival, another parent-teacher meeting, specifically for the hero course parents, was held regarding internships and their effect on the students' education. The parents shuffled their way onto school campus in a neatly formed line, showing their ID and personal approval to be there, in the form of a paper signed personally by Nedzu, to Hound Dog. All for no. Hisashi Midoriya waited patiently in the line for his turn. It wasn't a very long wait. He'd deliberately gotten there 10 minutes early. He got some odd looks, but most people assumed his quirk made him look the way he did and moved on. When he made it to the front of the line, Hound Dog looked at him, then his ID. Back to him, then at his ID again. He was probably trying to puzzle out whether this was proper identification, considering Hizashi had no face, but his eye color was marked on a screen on his ID. Eventually, though, Hound Dog must have decided it was sufficient enough and let him through the gate. He made a beeline for the conference room, already very familiar with where these meetings were held. There were very few other parents when he got there, and only one person he actually knew, although he had only met her once. Bakugo Mitsuki visited the Midori household a lot, mostly on her own since Katsuki seemed to have no interest in visiting anymore. Hizashi had a theory or two on why that was the case. He decided to sit as far from the one as possible. Yagi had used up all his time for the day and was unfortunately stuck in the teacher's lounge because Nedzu had disallowed any of the teachers from leaving the school during the meeting due to the security measures. When the teachers started flowing into the conference room, Yagi followed behind them to peek his head in. At the last conference, Midoriya Inko had said her husband normally attended these conferences and would most likely be at the next one, and Yagi would not deny that he was curious to see the man young Midoriya mentioned so scarcely. Regrettably, he never ended up finding him because his eyes landed on another figure, a figure he had previously thought was dead. But no, here he was, sitting casually in the conference room in UA. All for one. Yagi ran to the principal's office where Nedzu was printing out some last-minute handouts for the conference. Nedzu, are you aware there's a 200-year-old supervillain sitting in the conference room right now? The rat took a sip from his teacup. Where the hell did the tea come from? And turned towards Yagi. Yes, are you? I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't. Nedzu smiled. He's here as a concerned parent, just like everyone else in the room. I'm aware he's done reprehensible things in the underground, but right now he's just Midoriya Hizashi, concerned father of Midoriya Izuku. Yagi had a lot of questions, but instead, before he could ask any of them, the full meaning of what Nedzu had just said hit him like a truck. The fact that All For One was a semi-absent father was not that surprising. The fact that All For One was a semi-absent father of Midoriya Izuku was a whole different bird. The rat, who could seemingly read minds, continued. His ID says his birthday was around 205 years ago, and it went through the scanner with no trouble. Granted, it also said his eye color was green, despite the fact that he has no face, so the ID could be slightly out of date. He definitely shouldn't be here. He's a danger to everyone in this building and their children at home. Perhaps, but we can't exactly arrest him in front of everyone without some explanation, now can we? Nedzu said with a smile. Yagi wasn't sure whether he had expected that answer or not. On one hand, Nedzu wasn't wrong. That would be a PR nightmare, and they'd already had one of those after the USJ incident. On the other hand, the way Nedzu stated that was quite unnerving, and if Yagi didn't know better, he'd almost think Nedzu was the 200-year-old villain. Yagi was thankful the conniving rat was on their side. No, I suppose not, he said, walking out of the room. Truthfully, Yagi had been so concerned over the fact that his greatest enemy was sitting in a UA conference room that he'd completely forgotten about another crucial detail. His greatest adversary was also his successor's father, and wasn't that his sentence? It was strangely poetic, a boy being raised by both sides, destined to go against his own father. It seemed a little cliché. What's next? A dramatic reveal? When it's time for the final showdown, will All For One take off his mask and say, Izuku, I am your father? No, Yagi was pretty sure that line had already been used somewhere else. Oh well, even if it hadn't been, All For One's mask wasn't hiding anything anyways, so his dramatic reveal would be pretty lame. He sighed in frustration as he tried to metaphorically pick up his train of thought and put it back on the rails. Now that his brain wasn't trying to write a sci-fi fantasy movie, the answer was pretty clear. All For One was lying. Of course he would, right? It wouldn't be the first time, after all. And what better way to get into All Might's head than convincing him that the boy he very nearly considered his own child was actually All For One's son by blood? If it wasn't one of All For One's lies, then the universe was being very cruel. Yagi was going to get to the bottom of this. Considering the answers he'd gotten from Nedzu, he could safely assume that he would be absolutely of no help. Therefore, the next obvious step was to ask young Midoriya's mother herself. Ring, ring, ring. Hello, this is the Midoriya residence. Hello, you are Midoriya Inko, is that correct? Yes. If I remember correctly, there's a parent-teacher meeting conference going on in UA right now. Is there an emergency? Yagi attempted to chuckle lightheartedly, but instead dissolved into a fit of coughing. Sir, are you okay? Ah, yes, I'm perfectly fine, ma'am. More importantly, I would like to confirm that your husband is Midoriya Hizashi. He is. Oh my, is he bombarding you with questions already? I've heard from teachers at Alderad that the meetings would drag on for hours just from his questions alone. He is certainly an inquisitive man, but I'm afraid that's not quite the issue here. Would you care to describe his appearance for me? Inko sighed through the phone. So that's what this is about. Yes, I assure you that the man in the meeting is my husband, and no, nobody is stealing his identity. Surely he showed you his ID at the gate. Yes, he did, but I'm sure you can understand our skepticism as his birth year being 200 years ago, yes? I understand that, but I promise you that he's Izuku's real father. He may go abroad a lot for his job, but he truly does care about his son's education. Thank you for answering honestly, ma'am. I must go now. He hung up the phone and collapsed onto the couch. Was this really what life had come to? All for One himself was merely 2 rooms away from him, and he couldn't do anything about it. For now, Nedzu was right. Legally, he was just doing his parental duties. Yagi dragged himself off the couch once again and headed back towards the conference room. He looked through the window, and there his literal arch-nemesis was laughing and chatting with the other parents. Yagi swore he made no noise to indicate he was there, but the wretched man really must have some sort of sixth sense, because he turned his head slowly towards the window, stared straight at Yagi, no eyes and all, and grinned. When Hisashi got home that night, "Welcome home, darling," Inko yelled, running outside to greet him. "Did the meeting go well?" she asked cheerily, giving him a kiss where his cheek used to be. Hisashi laughed. "It couldn't have gone better, dear." He then turned around and used a projection quirk, stolen from an elder teacher, of course, to display the words, "The End," in big, bold letters into the sky. The end.